Princess Zarathiel stood on the crystal balcony of her palace, watching the strange ships from Earth land in the royal spaceport. The human vessels looked so simple compared to Velthari technology. They were just metal boxes with engines, nothing like the elegant curved ships of her people that could bend space itself. She touched the silver scales on her neck, a nervous habit she had since childhood. Today would change everything. The Galactic Council had decided. The humans needed protection, and the Velthari Empire needed allies. A marriage would solve both problems. Zarathiel had seen the reports about humans. They were weak, small creatures who somehow managed to spread across several star systems. They could not lift heavy objects like her people could. They could not survive in the cold vacuum of space for even a few seconds. Most aliens in the galaxy thought humans were lucky to have found space travel at all. "Your Highness," said Commander Thresh, her personal guard. His blue skin sparkled in the sunlight, and his forearms carried weapons that could destroy a building. "The human delegation has arrived. The one called Marcus Chen is with them." Zarathiel nodded. She had studied the files about Marcus Chen many times. He was a diplomat from something called the Colonial Defense Force. The name sounded impressive, but everyone knew humans had no real military power. Marcus was 32 years old, spoke 7 alien languages, and had spent most of his career writing treaties and trade agreements. His photo showed a man with dark hair and kind eyes. He looked harmless. The wedding ceremony would happen in 3 days. After that, she would be married to this human, and Earth would become a protected world under Velthari law. It was a smart move by the Council. Humans had something the galaxy needed. They were excellent at building things and finding resources. They worked hard and asked for very little in return. In exchange for protection, they would provide technology and raw materials to the Empire. Zarathiel walked through the palace halls toward the meeting room. Servants bowed as she passed. Their silver robes whispered against the crystal floors. Everything in the Velthari palace was made of crystal and precious metals. The walls themselves could sing when touched by Velthari hands. She wondered what the human would think of their advanced civilization. The meeting room doors opened before her. Inside, she saw the human delegation for the first time. They all looked so small and fragile. Their skin had strange colors, some pale, some dark, but none with the beautiful scales of her people. They wore simple black uniforms with small metal badges. No weapons were visible, which was proper for a diplomatic meeting. Marcus Chen stepped forward and bowed in the Velthari style. His pronunciation of the greeting words was perfect. "Your Highness, I am honored to meet you." Zarathiel studied him carefully. He was taller than she expected, but still shorter than any adult Velthari. His eyes were brown and intelligent. When he smiled, she noticed his teeth were small and flat, nothing like the sharp fangs of her people. Everything about him seemed gentle and peaceful. "Welcome to Velthari Prime, Marcus Chen," she replied in perfect English. "I hope your journey was comfortable." The formal meetings lasted for hours. Marcus impressed everyone with his knowledge of Velthari history and culture. He had read their ancient poetry and could discuss their philosophy with the court scholars. When the trade ministers talked about mineral rights and shipping routes, he asked smart questions and offered reasonable solutions. He never raised his voice or showed anger, even when some of the Velthari nobles made rude comments about human weakness. During a break in the meetings, Zarathiel found herself alone with Marcus on one of the palace terraces. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Marcus stood quietly, looking out at the city below where millions of Velthari went about their evening activities. "Are you nervous about the wedding?" Zarathiel asked. Marcus turned to her with that gentle smile. "A little. This is not how I imagined my life would go when I was young, but I understand the importance of what we are doing. This marriage will help both our peoples." "You speak like a diplomat," she said. "That is what I am," Marcus replied. "I believe words can solve more problems than weapons ever could." Zarathiel felt a strange emotion she could not name. This human seemed so different from what she expected. Most alien males tried to impress her with displays of strength or wealth. Marcus just stood there calm and thoughtful, asking nothing from her except conversation. The next 2 days passed quickly. Marcus toured the palace, learning about Velthari art and music. He spent hours in the library, reading their books with genuine interest. The palace staff began to like him because he was polite to everyone, even the lowest servants. He learned their names and asked about their families. No one could remember a royal visitor doing such things before. The wedding day arrived with great ceremony. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy came to witness the union. The crystal cathedral sparkled with rainbow light as Zarathiel walked down the aisle in her traditional silver gown. Marcus waited at the altar wearing a simple human suit. He had refused the elaborate Velthari robes offered to him, saying he wanted to represent his people honestly. The ceremony was beautiful, but strange. When they spoke their vows, Zarathiel promised to protect and guide Marcus as was proper for a Velthari wife. Marcus promised to honor and support her dreams, which was apparently the human custom. They exchanged rings, a Velthari crystal band for him and a simple gold ring from Earth for her. After the ceremony, there was a great feast. Alien nobles from dozens of worlds offered gifts and congratulations. Many spoke of the wisdom of bringing humans under Velthari protection. Some joked about how lucky humans were to have such powerful guardians. Marcus listened to it all with patience, never showing offense at the comments about human weakness. Late that night, after all the guests had gone, Zarathiel and Marcus stood together in the royal chambers that were now theirs to share. The rooms had been prepared with furniture sized for both of them. Human books sat next to Velthari crystals on the shelves. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we learn to live together," Zarathiel said. "We become partners in building peace between our worlds." Marcus nodded. "I think we can do that." "Your people are remarkable, Zarathiel. I hope to earn their respect in time." "You already have mine," she said, and realized she meant it. Looking at her new husband, Zarathiel felt hopeful about the future. Marcus seemed like the kind of person who could bridge the gap between species through understanding and patience. He was everything the reports had said: intelligent, peaceful, and diplomatic. She was glad the council had chosen him. The marriage was the beginning of a new age for both their peoples. Humans would be safe under Velthari protection, and the Empire would benefit from human industry and creativity. It seemed like a perfect arrangement. Zarathiel had no way of knowing that she had just married one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Marcus Chen smiled his gentle smile and began his new life as a Velthari prince, carrying secrets that would shake the foundations of everything she believed about humans. The wedding was over. The real story was just beginning. 3 years had passed since the royal wedding, and life in the Velthari palace had settled into a peaceful routine. Princess Zarathiel woke each morning to find Marcus already awake, reading reports from Earth or studying Velthari historical texts. He had made their shared chambers into a strange mix of both cultures. Human coffee makers sat next to Velthari meditation crystals, and Earth paintings hung beside traditional scale art from her homeworld. Marcus had surprised everyone by how quickly he adapted to palace life. Most alien visitors struggled with Velthari customs, but Marcus seemed to understand them instinctively. He learned the complex social rules that governed interactions between different ranks of nobles. He mastered the art of Velthari formal dining, which required using 4 different eating tools in a specific order. Most importantly, he never seemed bothered by the constant reminders of how much stronger and more advanced the Velthari were compared to humans. The royal court had grown to accept Marcus, though some still viewed him as an amusing pet rather than a real prince. Lord Kazthul, the military commander, often made jokes about how Marcus could probably be defeated by a Velthari child. Marcus would just smile and change the subject to something less confrontational. He never seemed to take offense at such comments. "Your husband is very patient," Commander Thresh had told Zarathiel one day after a particularly rude comment from Lord Kazthul. Most beings would have demanded satisfaction for such insults. "Humans handle conflict differently," Zarathiel had replied, though she was not entirely sure what she meant by that. Marcus spent his days in diplomatic work, helping to manage the growing relationship between Earth and the Velthari Empire. He worked with trade delegations, reviewed mining contracts, and helped solve disputes between human colonies and alien neighbors. His office in the palace had become a meeting place for beings from many different worlds, who found his calm approach to problems very helpful. The human colonies were thriving under Velthari protection. Pirates who had once raided human ships now avoided them completely, knowing that an attack on humanity would bring the wrath of the Empire. Human engineers worked alongside Velthari scientists, creating new technologies that benefited both species. The arrangement seemed perfect for everyone involved. Zarathiel had grown genuinely fond of her husband during these 3 years. Marcus was intelligent and thoughtful, with a sense of humor that could make her laugh even during the most boring state dinners. He remembered small details about her preferences and always asked about her day. When she felt stressed about royal duties, he would make her human tea and listen to her complaints without trying to offer solutions unless she asked for them. "You understand me better than most of my own people do," she had told him once. "That is because I pay attention," Marcus had replied. Humans are good at watching and learning. Marcus had also become something of a celebrity in certain circles of the palace. The younger nobles enjoyed his stories about Earth history and human culture. He had introduced them to human games and music, which had become popular among the court. The servants adored him because he treated them with respect and always said thank you for their help. The kitchen staff had learned to prepare human foods for Marcus. Though he ate Velthari cuisine most of the time, he had gained weight during his 3 years in the palace, which Zarathiel found amusing since he complained that human food portions were too small compared to Velthari meals. "My people eat much less than yours," he had explained. "We have to be more efficient with our resources." Marcus had also become involved in cultural exchange programs. He helped establish schools where young Velthari could learn about human art and literature. In return, human students came to the homeworld to study Velthari science and philosophy. The programs were very successful and had led to better understanding between the species. One thing that impressed everyone was Marcus's dedication to learning. He had mastered written Velthari, which was extremely difficult for most aliens because it required understanding complex harmonics. He studied their military history with the same enthusiasm he showed for their poetry. When asked why he was so interested in Velthari warfare, Marcus always said he wanted to understand all aspects of the culture he had married into. The other alien ambassadors at court often sought Marcus's advice on dealing with the Velthari government. He had developed a reputation as someone who could explain Velthari thinking to outsiders and human perspectives to the Velthari. Several trade disputes had been resolved through his mediation. The human has a gift for seeing all sides of a problem, Ambassador Yithkar of the Zephyrian Alliance had said. He would make an excellent negotiator for the Galactic Council. Zarathiel was proud of her husband's achievements, though she sometimes worried that he worked too hard. Marcus often stayed up late reading reports or preparing for meetings. When she suggested he take more time to relax, he would smile and say that Earth's future depended on maintaining good relationships with their protectors. The only strange thing about Marcus was his exercise routine. Every morning before dawn, he would go to a private garden behind the palace and practice what he called human meditation. Zarathiel had watched him a few times from their balcony. Marcus would move through slow, graceful poses that looked almost like a dance. When she asked about it, he explained that humans needed physical activity to stay healthy, and this was a traditional form of exercise from his homeland. "It helps me think clearly," he had said. "My people have practiced these movements for thousands of years." The movements looked peaceful and beautiful, like everything else about Marcus. Zarathiel enjoyed watching him practice, though she never joined him. Velthari did not need such exercises because their bodies were naturally stronger. As their 3rd anniversary approached, Zarathiel reflected on how lucky she had been. The political marriage had become something real and meaningful. Marcus was a good husband and a valuable ally to her people. The future looked bright for both their species. The other alien races in the galaxy had taken notice of humanity's success under Velthari protection. Several had begun to offer their own alliance proposals to Earth, hoping to gain access to human industrial capacity and creativity. Marcus always politely redirected these offers to the proper diplomatic channels. Maintaining humanity's exclusive relationship with the Velthari Empire. "Loyalty is very important to humans," he would explain to disappointed alien ambassadors. "We do not break our commitments easily." This loyalty had earned humanity even more respect among the Velthari nobility. They valued honor and faithfulness above almost everything else, and Marcus embodied these qualities perfectly. Some of the nobles had begun to say that humans might be weak in body, but they were strong in character. Lord Kazathul had even stopped making jokes about human weakness, though he still clearly believed them to be a minor species that was fortunate to have Velthari protection. During state meetings, he would nod approvingly when Marcus spoke about human dedication to the Alliance. At least they know their place. He had said to Zarathiel privately, "Your husband understands that humans must rely on others for protection." Zarathiel had agreed, though something about the comment bothered her in a way she could not explain. Marcus never seemed bothered by such attitudes, but she had begun to notice that he never actually agreed with them either. He would simply smile and change the subject. The third anniversary celebration was small and private, just family and close friends. Marcus gave Zarathiel a necklace made from crystals found on Earth, while she gave him a traditional Velthari meditation stone. They danced to music from both their worlds and shared stories about their hopes for the future. "Are you happy?" Zarathiel asked as they stood together on their balcony that night. "Very happy," Marcus replied, holding her close. "This has been the most peaceful time of my life." Zarathiel smiled, content in the knowledge that their marriage had exceeded everyone's expectations. Marcus had proven that humans could be valuable partners despite their physical limitations. The future seemed full of promise for both their peoples. She had no idea that peace was about to end forever. The emergency alarms began screaming at dawn, their crystal chimes echoing through every corridor of the palace. Zarathiel jerked awake to find Marcus already standing by the window, fully dressed and looking out at the sky. Dark shapes moved against the morning clouds, ships that did not belong to any friendly species. "Korthak," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying none of his usual warmth. Zarathiel felt her blood turn cold. The Korthak horde had been contained for decades by a carefully negotiated treaty. They were savage raiders from the edge of the galaxy, known for their cruelty and their habit of enslaving entire populations. The treaty was supposed to give them enough resources to leave civilized space alone. Something had gone terribly wrong. Commander Thresh burst through the chamber doors without ceremony. His forearms carried weapons and his blue skin had turned pale with stress. "Your Highness, we must get you to the secure bunkers immediately. The Korthak fleet is massive. Over 200 ships. They broke through our outer defenses in minutes." Through the crystal walls of the palace, Zarathiel could see the city below erupting in chaos. Velthari defense ships rose to meet the invaders, their elegant forms seeming small against the brutal black hulks of Korthak vessels. Explosions lit the sky as the battle began. "How is this possible?" Zarathiel demanded as they rushed through the palace corridors. "The treaty guaranteed peace for 50 years. Intelligence reports say their homeworld is dying," Thresh replied, his voice grim. "Massive resource depletion. They need new worlds to strip mine, and they decided to start with the richest targets in the galaxy. The royal family and key government officials were being evacuated to underground bunkers deep beneath the palace. These shelters could withstand planetary bombardment and had enough supplies to last for months. The plan was to wait out the attack while the Velthari fleet regrouped and pushed back the invaders. Marcus followed silently behind them, his face showing no emotion. He had not spoken since identifying the attackers. Zarathiel noticed that his usual diplomatic smile was completely gone, replaced by an expression she had never seen before. His brown eyes seemed darker somehow, watching everything with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. The bunkers were chaos. Nobles who had never experienced real danger were crying and demanding immediate rescue. Government ministers argued about evacuation procedures, while their staff tried to establish communications with the fleet. The massive crystal screens showed the battle raging overhead, and the news was not good. "They have weapons we have never seen before," reported Admiral Nethval from his flagship. "Some kind of energy drain that shuts down our systems. We are losing ships faster than we can count." The screens showed Korthak landing craft descending toward the city. These were not precision military strikes. The Korthak were bombing randomly, destroying everything in their path. They did not want to conquer the Velthari homeworld. They wanted to break it completely and take whatever remained. "Estimated time until the palace is overrun?" asked Lord Kazthul, still trying to maintain military discipline despite the fear in his voice. 4 hours at most," Admiral Nethval replied. "The city defenses are falling faster than we projected. I recommend immediate evacuation to the fleet." But the fleet was losing badly. More Korthak ships kept arriving through jump gates, and their new weapons were devastating the Velthari forces. The screens showed proud vessels that had protected the Empire for centuries being torn apart by alien technology that seemed designed specifically to counter Velthari defenses. Marcus stood in a corner of the bunker, watching the tactical displays with an expression that Zarathiel was beginning to find disturbing. He was not showing fear like everyone else. Instead, he seemed to be studying the Korthak attack patterns with professional interest. When she approached him, he barely acknowledged her presence. "Marcus, are you all right?" she asked. "I am fine," he replied, though his voice sounded different, colder. "Tell me about Korthak ground forces. What kind of armor do they wear? What weapons do they prefer?" The question seemed strange given their situation, but Zarathiel answered automatically. "Heavy bone armor made from the shells of creatures from their homeworld. Energy weapons that fire superheated plasma. They prefer close combat when possible. They are about the same size as Velthari, but much more savage. Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Marcus said, but he continued studying the tactical screens. The situation deteriorated rapidly over the next 2 hours. Korthak forces landed throughout the city and began their systematic destruction. Unlike other alien raiders who might spare some infrastructure for later use, the Korthak destroyed everything. They burned libraries, shattered crystal spires, and killed anyone who could not escape in time. "The palace defenses are failing," Commander Thresh reported. "They will break through the outer walls within the hour." Lord Kazathul was organizing the palace guard for a last stand. The Velthari warriors were brave and skilled, but they were facing an enemy that outnumbered them 10-1. The crystal halls that had rung with music and laughter for centuries would soon echo with the sounds of battle. "We need to evacuate through the underground tunnels," Zarathiel decided. "Get everyone to the secondary bunkers while there is still time." But the tunnels were already compromised. Korthak engineers had mapped the palace layout somehow and were attacking from multiple directions. The escape routes were cut off one by one as the enemy forces closed in like a net. Marcus had not spoken for over an hour. He stood motionless, watching the screens that showed Korthak troops moving through the palace levels above them. His breathing had become very slow and controlled, like someone preparing for intense physical activity. When Zarathiel touched his arm, his muscles felt coiled like steel springs. "The throne room," Commander Thresh announced. "They are attacking the throne room. If that falls, they will have control of the palace systems." The screens showed the magnificent crystal chamber where Zarathiel had been crowned, where she had married Marcus 3 years ago. Now it was being invaded by creatures in black armor who destroyed everything they touched. The ancient throne, carved from a single massive crystal, cracked under the impact of Korthak weapons. "My ancestors ruled from that throne for 1,000 years, Zarathiel whispered. The palace guard was making their final stand in the approaches to the royal chambers. Brave Velthari warriors fought desperately against overwhelming odds, their advanced weapons barely slowing the Korthak advance. One by one, the defensive positions fell. "They are breaking through the final barriers," Thresh reported, his voice heavy with defeat. "The royal chambers will fall within minutes." That was when the bunker's main doors exploded inward. Korthak shock troops poured through the breach, their bone armor stained with the blood of the palace guards they had killed. They were massive creatures, nearly as tall as Velthari but built like living weapons. Their faces were hidden behind skull-like masks, and they carried plasma weapons that could melt through crystal walls. The nobles in the bunker screamed and pressed against the far walls. Commander Thresh and his warriors moved to intercept the attackers, but there were too many Korthak and not enough defenders. The battle would be over in seconds. Zarathiel grabbed Marcus's arm, expecting to find him frozen with fear like she was. Instead, she found him completely calm. His dark eyes focused on the Korthak with an intensity that seemed almost predatory. "Marcus, we need to run," she said urgently. He turned to look at her, and for a moment she did not recognize the man she had married. The gentle diplomat was gone. In his place was someone who looked at the advancing Korthak troops like a hunter sizing up prey. "Run where?" Marcus asked quietly. "There is nowhere left to go." The Korthak leader, distinguished by additional bone spikes on his armor, raised his plasma weapon and pointed it directly at Zarathiel. The creatures had come for the royal family specifically. They wanted to break Velthari resistance by killing the symbols of their civilization. That was when Marcus reached inside his formal, diplomatic jacket and drew forth a weapon that Zarathiel had never seen before. The blade that emerged seemed to sing as it cut through the air, its curved steel reflecting the bunker's lights like captured starfire. Marcus held the sword with a familiarity that spoke of years of training, his stance shifting into something that was definitely not a diplomatic posture. "Stay behind me," he told Zarathiel, his voice carrying an authority she had never heard from him before. The gentle husband she thought she knew was gone, replaced by something that made even the Korthak hesitate. For the first time since the invasion began, Zarathiel felt a spark of hope. But she also felt a chill of fear as she realized she had never truly known the man she had married. Marcus stepped forward to meet the enemy, and everything changed forever. The transformation was instant and terrifying. The moment Marcus gripped the sword, his entire body language changed. The gentle diplomat disappeared, replaced by something that moved with deadly purpose. Zarathiel watched in stunned silence as her husband became someone she had never seen before. The Korthak leader fired his plasma weapon directly at Marcus. The superheated bolt would have killed any normal being instantly. But Marcus was no longer where the shot was aimed. He had moved with impossible speed, sliding sideways and forward in one fluid motion. The blade in his hands caught the bunkers, light as it carved through the air in a perfect arc. The Korthak leader's head separated from his shoulders before he realized what had happened. What followed defied everything Zarathiel thought she knew about combat. The remaining Korthak troops were hardened warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. They were larger, stronger, and better armed than any human should be able to handle. They should have torn Marcus apart in seconds. Instead, they began to die. Marcus moved through them like death itself. The sword became an extension of his will, striking with surgical precision at gaps in their bone armor. He ducked under plasma bolts that would have vaporized him, rolled away from crushing blows that cracked the crystal floor and always came up cutting. Every movement flowed into the next with a grace that was beautiful and horrible at the same time. A Korthak warrior swung a massive war club at Marcus's head. Marcus dropped into a crouch that brought him below the weapon's arc, spun on one heel and opened the creature's throat with an upward cut. Before the first attacker had finished falling, Marcus was already moving toward the next target. Two Korthak rushed him from opposite sides, thinking to crush him between them. Marcus waited until the last possible moment, then leaped straight up. The aliens crashed into each other while Marcus landed on one's shoulders and drove his blade down through the gap in its neck armor. He kicked off the falling body and landed in a fighting stance, ready for the next attack. The surviving Korthak began to show something Zarathiel had never seen from their species before: hesitation. These creatures were bred for violence, trained from birth to kill without mercy, but Marcus was making them afraid. A Korthak with a plasma rifle tried to keep distance between himself and the human. Marcus threw his sword with perfect accuracy, the blade spinning through the air to bury itself in the alien's chest. Before the creature hit the ground, Marcus had rolled forward, retrieved his weapon, and was moving toward the next target. Commander Thresh and his warriors could only watch in amazement. They had been prepared to die heroically defending the royal family. Instead, they witnessed a single human destroy an entire squad of elite Korthak shock troops. The gentle prince consort who had never shown anger was carving through enemy soldiers like they were training dummies. "Impossible," breathed Lord Kazthul, who had spent decades studying military tactics. "No being moves like that. No single warrior could defeat so many trained killers," but Marcus was not finished. More Korthak poured through the breached bunker doors drawn by the sounds of battle. They found their comrades dead, and a small human standing calmly in the center of the carnage, cleaning his blade with a piece of torn cloth. The new arrivals attacked with rage and disbelief. How could their strongest warriors have been defeated by something so small? They fired their weapons wildly, trying to overwhelm the human with sheer firepower. Marcus seemed to predict where every shot would go. He moved between the plasma bolts like he was dancing, never stopping, never slowing down. When he reached the shooters, his sword found the weak points in their armor with mechanical precision. Joints, gaps, vulnerable spots that even Velthari weapons had trouble penetrating. Marcus exploited them all. One Korthak managed to grab Marcus from behind, lifting him off the ground with arms that could crush stone. Marcus drove his elbow backward into the creature's throat, broke free, spun around, and removed the alien's head with a single horizontal cut. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. Zarathiel realized she was holding her breath. The Marcus she had married would never hurt anyone. This man killed with the efficiency of a machine and the skill of a master artist. Every cut was exactly where it needed to be, every movement perfectly timed. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary violence, just precise, deadly technique applied with terrifying competence. The last Korthak in the bunker was their demolitions expert, carrying enough explosives to collapse the entire chamber. He triggered the device, planning to kill everyone, including himself, rather than face the human warrior. Marcus covered the distance between them in 2 bounds, grabbed the explosive device, and threw it back through the breach where it detonated harmlessly in the corridor. Outside, the explosions expert died with Marcus's blade through his heart before the sound of the blast had finished. Echoing, silence fell over the bunker. Bodies in black bone armor lay scattered across the crystal floor. Steam rose from cooling plasma burns in the walls, and in the center of it all stood Marcus, breathing normally, his sword held casually at his side. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, his voice returning to its normal, gentle tone. The contrast was so jarring that several nobles began laughing hysterically. The man who had just killed 15 elite warriors with a sword was asking about their well-being in the same caring voice he used to inquire about their tea preferences. "Commander." Thresh was the first to recover from shock. "Your Highness," he said to Marcus, using the formal address for the first time without any trace of condescension. "What are you?" Marcus looked at the dead Korthak, then at his bloody sword, then at the faces of everyone in the bunker. They were all staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Even Zarathiel was looking at him like he was a stranger. "I am what I have always been," Marcus said quietly. "I am human." "Humans are peaceful," Lord Casthol protested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Humans avoid conflict. They are diplomats and traders, not warriors." Marcus smiled, but it was not the gentle expression Zarathiel remembered. This smile had edges to it like his sword. "Humans are excellent diplomats," Marcus agreed. "We prefer to solve problems with words when possible. But when words fail," he gestured at the carnage around them, "we are also excellent at solving problems in other ways." The tactical screens showed that the battle for the palace was far from over. More Korthak forces were fighting their way through the upper levels, overwhelming the remaining defenders. But something had changed. New contacts were appearing on the sensors, ships dropping out of hyperspace in the outer system. "Human vessels," reported the surviving communications officer, his voice filled with wonder. "Dozens of them. They are moving toward the planet at maximum speed." Zarathiel stared at the tactical display. The approaching ships were not the simple cargo vessels or diplomatic craft she associated with humanity. These were sleek, predatory shapes that moved through space with deadly purpose. Warships. An entire fleet of human warships that had somehow appeared exactly when they were needed. "How did they know to come?" she asked. Marcus was cleaning his sword with methodical care, checking the blade for damage. "Earth has been monitoring this situation for weeks. We knew the Korthak Treaty was failing. Human ships have been positioned throughout this sector, waiting for orders." "But the intelligence reports," Commander Thresh said. "Earth has no significant military. You are a peaceful species under our protection." Marcus looked up from his sword, and his brown eyes held depth that Zarathiel had never noticed before. "Human survival has always depended on being underestimated. It is much easier to avoid fights when potential enemies think you are not worth fighting." The truth was beginning to sink in. Humanity had been deliberately hiding their true capabilities. They had presented themselves as weak and harmless while building one of the most effective military forces in the galaxy. The diplomatic marriage, the trade agreements, the cultural exchanges, it had all been cover for something much more complex. "The sword," Zarathiel said, looking at the weapon that had killed so many in such a short time. "Where did it come from?" Marcus held up the blade, examining its curved edge in the bunker's lights. "This belonged to my grandfather, and his grandfather before him. It has been in my family for over 400 years. On Earth, we call it a katana. It was forged by masters who understood that sometimes, no matter how much you prefer peace, you must be prepared for war." The Korthak had made a terrible mistake. They had thought they were attacking a weak alien species protected by their Velthari allies. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping for 3 years, waiting patiently for the moment when words would no longer be enough. Marcus sheathed his sword and walked over to Zarathiel. For a moment she flinched away from him. This man who had killed with such skill was still her husband, but she no longer knew who he really was. "I am sorry you had to see this," Marcus said gently, his diplomatic mask sliding back into place. I had hoped it would never be necessary. Who are you? Zarathiel whispered. Marcus smiled, and this time it was the gentle expression she remembered from their wedding day. I am the man you married. I am also a colonel in the Human Colonial Defense Force, Special Operations Division. Both things are true. The human fleet was entering. The human fleet moved through space like a pack of hunting wolves. Zarathiel watched the tactical displays in amazement as ships she had never seen before tore through Korthak formations with ruthless efficiency. These were not the simple cargo vessels that had brought Marcus to their wedding 3 years ago. These were purpose-built warships that had been hiding in the outer reaches of human space, waiting for exactly this moment. Marcus stood beside her in the bunker, his diplomatic composure fully restored. The sword was hidden once again beneath his jacket, and he was speaking calmly into a communication device, coordinating the human response with military precision. Strike Force Alpha, focus on the heavy cruisers. Beta and Gamma, clear the landing zones. I want those troop transports eliminated before they can deploy more ground forces, Marcus said into his communicator. His voice carried the authority of someone who had given such orders many times before. Yes, Colonel Chen, came the reply from space. Understood. Beginning attack runs now. Colonel Chen. Zarathiel felt another piece of her understanding crumble. Her gentle husband was not just a diplomat or even a warrior. He was a military commander, possibly one of high rank. How many lies had their entire marriage been built on? The screen showed human fighters engaging Korthak vessels in combat that was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The human ships moved with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic, working together like parts of a single organism. Where Korthak vessels relied on brute force and superior firepower, the humans used speed, precision, and tactics that the aliens could not counter. How is this possible? Lord Casthul demanded, watching a single human destroyer outmaneuver 3 Korthak heavy cruisers. Your ships are smaller and less armed than theirs. Marcus smiled the same gentle smile that had charmed the Velthari court for 3 years. Human military doctrine has always emphasized mobility over raw power. We learned long ago that it is better to hit the enemy where they are weak than to try to match them where they are strong. A Korthak battleship, massive enough to destroy a city, exploded in spectacular fashion as a coordinated attack from 6 human vessels found its weak points simultaneously. The aliens had superior technology and stronger weapons, but they were fighting an enemy that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war against larger and more powerful opponents. The morning exercises, Zarathiel said suddenly, remembering Marcus's daily routine in the palace garden. You were not meditating. You were training. Both, Marcus replied. Humans have learned to combine physical preparation with mental discipline. The movements you saw were from an ancient martial art called Tai Chi. It looks peaceful, but it teaches balance, timing, and control, all essential skills for combat. The revelation hit Zarathiel like a physical blow. For 3 years, she had watched her husband practice what she thought was harmless meditation. In reality, he had been maintaining fighting skills honed over decades of training. Every morning while she slept, Marcus had been preparing for the possibility of war. Commander Thresh was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. Your ships coordinate like they have been fighting together for years. How long has humanity been preparing for this kind of conflict? Since the day we first met another intelligent species, Marcus answered honestly. Humans learned early in our history that peace is only possible when you are strong enough to defend it. We have been building our defensive capabilities since we first reached the stars. The tide of battle was turning decisively in favor of the combined human and Velthari forces. The surviving Korthak vessels were beginning to retreat, realizing that they had seriously underestimated their opponents. But the damage to Zarathiel's worldview was complete and permanent. The trade agreements, she said, putting together more pieces of the puzzle. The mining rights, the shipping contracts. You have been mapping our entire sector. Strategic intelligence, Marcus confirmed, but also genuine cooperation. Humans benefit greatly from our relationship with the Velthari Empire. We simply made sure we understood the political and military situation thoroughly. Marcus's communicator crackled with reports from the human fleet. The Korthak invasion force was in full retreat, their ships jumping to hyperspace as fast as their damaged systems would allow. The threat to the Velthari homeworld was over, but the implications of what had happened would resonate throughout the galaxy. "Sir," came a voice from the communicator, "Admiral Harrison requests permission to pursue the retreating Korthak fleet." Marcus considered for a moment. "Negative. Let them go. They will spread word about what happened here. That serves our purposes better than destroying them completely." Zarathiel stared at her husband. "You want them to tell other species what they saw here? Fear is often more effective than force," Marcus said. "The Korthak will tell everyone they meet that humanity is not the weak species they appeared to be. That message will prevent many future conflicts." The bunker's main doors opened as palace guards cleared the upper levels of remaining Korthak stragglers. The immediate danger was over, but everything had changed forever. The nobles and government officials who had cowered in terror just hours earlier now looked at Marcus with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Lord Kazthul approached Marcus with visible uncertainty. For years he had made jokes about human weakness. Now he had seen a single human warrior destroy an entire squad of elite Korthak troops with nothing but a sword. "Colonel Chen," he said formally, "I owe you an apology and an explanation." "No apology necessary," Marcus replied. "You reacted based on the information you had. That information was deliberately incomplete." "But why?" Zarathiel asked. "Why hide your true capabilities? Why let us think you were weak?" Marcus looked at her with eyes that seemed older and wiser than they had that morning. "Because strong species are threats. Weak species are assets. The galaxy is more comfortable with humans as junior partners than as equals. It was safer for everyone if we were underestimated." The tactical screens showed human ships taking up defensive positions around the planet while Velthari vessels regrouped. The coordination between the two fleets was perfect, suggesting that this level of cooperation had been planned long in advance. "How long have our militaries been working together?" Commander Thresh asked. "Since before the wedding," Marcus admitted. "The marriage was real, but it was also cover for establishing formal military cooperation between our species. Human advisors have been helping to upgrade Velthari defensive systems for 3 years." Another revelation that shook Zarathiel's understanding of her own life. Her marriage had been arranged not just for political alliance, but to provide cover for military cooperation that could have been seen as threatening by other galactic powers. She had been living at the center of a deception that involved the highest levels of both governments. The cultural exchanges, the educational programs, she said, thinking of all the initiatives Marcus had supported. How much of that was intelligence gathering? "All of it served multiple purposes," Marcus said. "But the cultural connections are real. Humans genuinely admire Velthari civilization. We want to be allies, not just because it serves our strategic interests, but because we respect your people." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but Zarathiel was no longer sure she could trust her ability to read Marcus. How much of the man she had fallen in love with was real, and how much was in carefully constructed persona designed to achieve military and political objectives? Admiral Harrison's voice came through the communicator again. "Colonel, we have confirmation that the Korthak fleet has jumped out of the system. The immediate threat is neutralized. What are your orders regarding the long-term situation?" Marcus looked around the bunker at the faces of the Velthari leadership. They were all listening, waiting to hear what humanity's true intentions were now that their deception had been revealed. "Standard defensive posture," Marcus said into the communicator. "We return to our previous operational status. The alliance remains unchanged." "Understood, sir. Human fleet standing down to defensive positions." Lord Kazthul stepped forward. "What does this mean for the future? Now that we know the truth about human capabilities, how does our relationship change?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "That depends on what you want it to mean. Humans have no desire to dominate or control other species. We prefer cooperation to conquest. But we will no longer pretend to be helpless if threatened." "The Galactic Council will need to be informed," Commander Thresh said. "The balance of power has shifted significantly." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "Humanity will be taking a more active role in galactic affairs. We have been preparing for this moment for years." Zarathiel felt overwhelmed by the scope of what had been hidden from her. How many other species know the truth? "Very few," Marcus said. "The Centauri Alliance has suspected for some time. The Andromedan Republic has been investigating human military capabilities. But most of the galaxy still believes the official version of human history. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been playing a game of galactic politics that we